Hey, everybody. I'm Rebecca from Thieving Otter Farm. And we are two chicks Coturnix giving you the scoop
Without the poop?
of Coturnix quail. So today, I guess you probably noticed that my dear friend Leah is not with us again. Leah's unfortunately having some medical issues. She had a root canal and they damaged some nerves in her face. So she's having a hard time right now with that. So we hope to have her back soon. But Jason Covey here decided to come on short notice. I appreciate it, Jason, and be my co-host.
No problem.
So Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Uh, just a regular, everyday person, hunt, fish, country boy type of deal. Been tinkering with animals and things for quite a few years ever since I was little. And so I, kind of got stuck on, birds, chickens, quail, thing like that. The gateway drug is the chicken, and
Yeah.
then other things kind of follow suit, ducks and geese. And I've been through the gambit of birds, and I've kind of found a lot of interest in the last 5 years in quail, and spent a lot of time trying to dig up a lot of information and trying to make things easier on myself, and see if I can make something of it. So
Yeah, yeah. So, for those of you listening, Jason was who helped me out when I was testing my cooling packs. I wanted a way to ship eggs in the summertime, um, that would be a little safer for them because when eggs get too hot, it can decrease your viability. And so, Jason sent me some thermometers to put in there, thermometer hygrometers, and to ship to him with some eggs. And I sent 2 boxes. One box was the control; it didn't have any cooling packs in it, and the other box had the cooling pack. Both of them had the thermometers in them, and I taped the boxes together because I wanted to make sure that they suffered the same shipping conditions, that something didn't happen to one that happened to the other. And Jason was really nice and took all that data and calculated it for me. And you know, one thing I've learned about Jason is he is all about the data. You like tracking stuff.
yeah, I like to know how I was the kid that took apart his toys to find out how it worked. So that's me. I'm kind of curious as to how things work, and you know what different variables are that is out there that affects eggs and things during shipping, temperatures, rough rides. I mean, it's just all kinds of different. For everybody, it's going to be different because when you ship eggs, everybody's roads are different. So
Mhm.
you go to Kentucky and it might be, who knows, from roads I've seen in Kentucky are pretty smooth, but you go to Tennessee and transfer, it's a little
Yeah,
bit rough. So
Tennessee's bad.
I wish I could put a like a Richter scale or something in the box with them to see what we register at with that. But the only
Yeah.
thing I could see was humidity and temperature with that. But that'll let me know whether or not I needed to throw them in the incubator right away, or I could let them just sit and rest for a while.
Yeah, yeah, and it was great to show, at least with my experiment, that the eggs didn't get too cold.
Yep.
That was one of my fears of any kind of, cooling pack, ice pack kind of thing. Did the eggs freeze? Did they get too cold? And how long the cooling lasts. If it only lasted for 5 hours, then it wouldn't be very effective.
Yep.
So that was such a big help. On a different note, I'm jealous that you have the last name Covey as a quail breeder. That is so perfect. Like, dude.
Yeah, I don't know how many people have asked me. It's like, did you just change your name, just so you could put that up there, so you could be in quail groups or something? I'm like, No, that's really my last name. So, I mean, you want to see my driver's license?
It's perfect. Okay, so because Jason is so good at keeping track of data and whatnot, I asked him on today to talk about some specific things that Jason is really good at. And we're going to start out by talking about like the tabletop incubators, kind of the less expensive incubators, and using like secondary thermometers and hygrometers in those. So let's first talk about why would you need or want to use a secondary thermometer or hygrometer in an incubator?
Um, well, if you're going cheap, well, that's the reason, one of the reasons why you're going cheap. So it's not really a whole lot of quality control in those units, and they're just there to heat and circulate air. So
Mhm.
you got to do something. Sometimes they can be as much as 5 degrees off,
Oh
and
yeah.
humidity could be way more off. So um, and also if it fails, the display fails, or the incubator as a whole fails.
Mhm.
If you got a Bluetooth, you can have an alert. It can alert you to say, hey, temperature's low, humidity's out of whack, whatever. Or that secondary can verify for you, what it actually is and how far your incubator is really off.
Yeah, yeah. So many of those readouts are just so incorrect. And if you are running your incubator based on incorrect readouts, then you're incubating your eggs at a wrong temperature or humidity. I know I had an experience. So I started out with inexpensive incubators off of Amazon, no name, Chinese incubators. And I had one that the readout said it was, 99.5. But when I went to take the eggs out to put them in lockdown, the eggs were hot to the touch.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually got a secondary thermometer and I put it in there. They were like at 160 degrees.
Oh
They
Lord.
were like cooked,
Mm.
just about steaming. So and here's an incubator that shows everything's good, you know.
Yeah.
So it's really important to have, something that you can verify with. So talking about that, we need to talk about the fact that just as not all incubators are the same, and sometimes cheaper incubators might not work as well, the same can be said for thermometers and hygrometers, right?
Oh yeah. You go on Amazon and buy the little hockey pucks. I
Yeah,
mean, I've seen 4 of them lined up in an incubator, and they say, "Oh, all of them says, you know,
something
something
different.
different." Yeah, I'm
Off by
like,
multiple degrees.
well,
Yep.
which one do I go with? I'm like, and they asked a question on Facebook groups. I'm like, well, did you calibrate anything? And they're like, what's that? And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, well, I can't really help you. We're just gambling. Let's roll some dice and go
Yeah,
with it.
let's rock, paper,
I'm
scissors.
like, I don't even know if the incubator is correct. Because a lot of people, when they buy an incubator, they think incubator, is going to be right.
Yeah.
That's and because it's kind of a technical piece of equipment,
Mhm.
but I mean, it's not, like I said, cheap, and it's there to heat and circulate air, and the quality control was out the window for $35, you know.
Exactly. And when you're purchasing a thermometer or hygrometer, a lot of times if you look under the details, under the specs of that, it'll tell you kind of the accuracy range. And I know that, looking at some of the ones on Amazon, they can be off by plus or minus 2 degrees Fahrenheit and plus or minus 5 degrees 5% or more in humidity.
Oh
2
yeah.
degrees with a tiny quail egg is totally too much. That's
Oh yeah.
detrimental. That's and then people, you know want to use those, and they might go, okay, well, I can't trust my readout, so I will trust this thermometer, not knowing that now they've set it so where the eggs are not going to make it. So,
Yeah.
um, okay, so you briefly mentioned calibrating. So why would you calibrate?
Um, you need to calibrate it to make sure that you are as close to your set point temperature as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you need some type of scientific method to it. If you're doing humidity, there's a couple different ways for that. And then for temperature, there is, you got to buy quality type of, thermometers,
Yep.
and, or something that's well known, like a Brincy product, or you can go to some of these, go online to some of these lab supply stores, and they actually have but they're like $200 or $300.
Yeah,
You
those
know,
are like laboratory calibrated. Yeah, those are.
you can't get any closer with some of those, but but like I said, I've found some things that I think can, they advertise half degree accuracy, things like that. There's other, like I said, some of the some of the temperature um, and hygrometers that you can buy. They're so far off. You really don't, you need to verify them, and you need to calibrate them. So you need something to compare it to.
Mhm,
Um,
that's true.
so that's that, that one particular thermometer known as a master.
Yeah.
That's the one thermometer you go back to every single time to verify, you know, your hygrometer slash thermometer or your incubator. So
Yep.
you check it against that one particular thermometer that is always within that half degree accuracy every single time. So, and uh, whenever you set your set your incubator up to put a new batch of eggs in it, verify and make sure everything's within calibration every single time. That's
Okay.
the way I do it. It verifies it, that way I know that nothing is off in the incubator.
Cool. Can you explain your process for calibrating for both temperature and humidity?
Um, well, one way that if you're kind of in a pickle and you have, say, eggs in the incubator and you're unsure, you've got your hockey pucks in there, and you got 5 different, temperatures, and you don't know what's going on. Well, obviously you can't ice bath a hockey puck style digital thermometer. And I've seen people put them in Ziploc bags and stuff like that. I just
Mhm.
don't know how accurate those are because of the air that's in the bag with it,
Okay.
air acting as an insulator. But you can, if you have a dial thermometer, that's an easy, quick way to verify your temperature. Ice bath it. Pack a
Okay.
glass full of ice, fill it with water, let it set for 10 or 15 minutes, let it stabilize, pack some more ice in there, and then put your thermometer right dead in the middle of the glass, not on the sides or anything, and let that set and stabilize 15, 20 minutes, and you should read 32 degrees.
Okay.
So once you read 32 degrees, if it's off, there's a nut or a screw on the back of it. You can adjust it to the 32 degree mark. And every time you make an adjustment, you need to put it back in there for another 10 or 15 minutes to verify, because you could overshoot the adjustment or
Got it.
underdo it. So pull that out. You can chunk that in your incubator, and that'll get you close. That'll get you probably within a degree and a half, maybe 2 degrees.
Now, once
So
you've done that, can you use that one as the master, or do you need one of those like laboratory ones for that?
no, I like to get it even tighter because, like you said, quail eggs, the smaller the eggs you get, the smaller thermal mass you have.
Yep.
So, as the temperature goes up and down in an incubator, it fluctuates and can change the, temperature on the embryos and stuff like that. can kind of be a little on the detrimental side with temperature fluctuations. So anyway, that'll get you out of the pickle, but to be accurate enough, I have found this. It's produced by Brincy Products, and a lot of people, I don't know why, don't know about it. It's on their website, and I've looked. I don't know if you could. There it is.
Okay. Yep.
Brincy Products, and this on their website, it is. They say it's within 1/2 degree accuracy. 1/2 degree accuracy of, say, the set point. 99 degrees or 100 degrees, one or the two. So as long as you can get 1/2 degree accuracy, I think you'll be a whole lot better off. It covers a teeny tiny little window. This does not go down. When you calibrate something on such tight tolerances, 1/2 degree accuracy, they tend to focus on one particular setting. It's kind of like a wall. If it's an eighth of an inch off on this end, by the time you get to the other end, it's an inch off.
Oh yeah. It's a lot more. Yep.
You got to narrow it down and measure it in smaller increments. And this is kind of what this does with temperature. They have narrowed it down to that 99.5 degree mark. And it goes from 77 degrees to 106 degrees. And it is extremely sensitive. I don't know if you can see I'm holding the end of it, and it's just steadily going up. So it's extremely sensitive. It's got a large bulb on it. It's probably about roughly 6 inches. It is a glass liquid thermometer. And the reason why I like these is because of its accuracy. Every time I've put this in an incubator, check the calibration on it, it has got me, for quail, Coturnix, hatching late day 16, majority hatches on 17. And if I have an egg or two that might be just sitting in there and doing nothing, I'll let it run to 18, halfway through day 18, and then I call it. Because I just don't want, those really late ones, because
stragglers
and things like that. There could be something going on with them. So, but yeah, these thermometers are extremely accurate, and they're like $11.
Okay.
And they're made and produced in the UK. So,
and how do you situate them in your incubator? Are you able to see that the marks there, or where do you put them?
Like this Matacoupix that I got, it has the holes in the trays. So these are actually about the same size as those holes, and you can kind of stick it down in there.
Okay.
And you can just turn it and spin it to where you need it, so you can read what you need to read, after you've done put it in there. Just let it set for a while. I usually let it. Once you open a lid on an incubator, you need to let the environment stabilize. Once you close it back down and put this in there. So I'd let it run 15, 20 minutes. You can let it run 30 if you want. But that's enough to clear the air out and get everything flowing again, and
heat it up.
Yep. And when you put these in your incubator, any thermometer, the dial thermometer or this thermometer, set the incubator up, or you plan on, hatching at, and heat it up. Heat the incubator up for a couple hours. That's the way all the plastic and everything is warm. Everything is warm. And then that's when I start all of my calibration. After about a couple hours, everything being warmed up to that 99.5.
Got it. Okay. And then you had talked about a couple of other types of incubators before we started, or not incubators, thermometers, before we started the show. We talked about ThermPro and some Covey. Do you want to talk about those and what you use them for?
Well, I have a couple of the I have quite a few Covey stuff, but the ThermoPro stuff, I find them to be a whole lot more accurate out of the box, a little more trustworthy. I don't have any of their. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask you this question, but do they have um, does ThermoPro make one that's Bluetooth capable and calibratable?
I'm not really sure because I usually use the ones that are on the Hatching Time website.
Yeah,
So I haven't looked to see if there are Bluetooth ones,
I
but that would be
haven't.
very handy.
I haven't seen any. That I know of. Unless they've come out with a new model or something. So, yeah, that's one reason why I didn't go with the ThermoPro. But the ThermoPro out of the box is very accurate. I have one of them, and then I have their Lightning that I really really like, and it's really accurate for grilling. I use it for grilling too, but it's really accurate for spot checking in the incubator. I don't use it for calibrating anything, but you put it in an ice bath, it's 32 degrees. It's just fast readouts. You stick it down in the incubator in the air holes and stuff like that around the sides and stuff. Especially this Matacupic, it's got 4 little holes on the sides. You can put them in there and you can spot check just to while you're incubating eggs, and it'll throw you a readout just like that. It's really quick. I really like that about it. But I'm majority of the time, I know a lot of people say stuff about Govies, and they're good, but I find that a lot of the times they're a little off out of the box. Their
Mhm.
accuracy is so. But the thing I like about them is they're calibratable. You can go in and adjust it in the tenths,
Got
and
it. Okay.
so you can fine tune those. And that's what I like about the Govee versus the ThermoPro. I wish ThermoPro would have the same deal where you could link it to your phone and be able to calibrate it in that way. But as far as just throwing something in your incubator, they're really good out of the box. But I don't suggest trusting them 100% right yet.
Right, and that's the Therm Pro. The Govee, you do recommend doing a calibration on first.
Yeah, well, I calibrate all of them.
Yep.
I make sure all of them are reading like they're supposed to read. But the Govee, I highly recommend those. I highly recommend taking and calibrating them.
Mhm.
The chances of getting one that's 100% accurate is, from what I've seen, is kind of low. But I don't use anything with a display on it.
Got it. Okay.
I don't have the 2x2 or whatever, because it sacrifices sometimes in the tabletops. It sacrifices, they're so big it sacrifices egg space,
Yeah.
and then it can block airflow.
Got it.
So you're not trying to mess up the airflow within the incubator. So then you might create yourself a cool spot.
Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
like I said, that's the reason I go with these. These are the Govee minis. They're little tiny things.
Yeah.
They're only like 2 inches, but they're about the size of an egg. You can slip them right down in the spot where an egg goes.
And that's actually what we did when we did the experiment. Is
Yep.
I slipped one of those in the egg hole for the shipping foam and shipped it like I would an egg.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're these things right here. They're like, I think you can buy them in like 5 or 10 or whatever. You can get them down pretty cheap. And it's like I mentioned to you, is like if you got $150, $200 worth of eggs,
Yeah.
I mean, throw one of these in there,
For sure.
if the buyer wants to ship you one, do it that way. I've done that with some eggs before, real high dollar eggs and whatnot, and I've put them in there just so I can keep an eye on the temperature and humidity mainly the temperature during shipping.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these, like I said, you can calibrate the humidity on them. You can calibrate the temperature on them. You can put them anywhere in an incubator and just lay them in there. And the good thing about them, they're Bluetooth to your phone, and you can use them for hot and cold spots in the incubators also. And you can just lay them all over the place while you're setting your incubator up, and just have them all linked to your phone at one time and read them all at one time. The big one, that's all you got is the big one. And then you kind of got to, it's bulky and you got to move it around.
Yep.
And plus, you could probably buy for I don't know, how much are those, the Thermopros? Are they like 30, $35, something like that?
I'll have to look. I haven't purchased one in so long because they do tend to last pretty well.
Oh yeah, they do. They're pretty good.
But I will look it up. Okay, so how do you go about calibrating, since you were talking about like the hockey pucks that we were talking
Yeah.
about, and you don't want to put them directly in the water. How do you go about calibrating your gobies?
They're all calibrated, all go back to these.
Okay.
Everything goes back to this. This is my master.
So you
Uh,
calibrate that and then you compare it to the whatever it is thermometer that you're wanting to compare to.
yeah, this right here isn't, you can't ice bath this. There's no way to ice bath this thermometer right here. It
Oh
Like I
yeah,
said,
because it doesn't go down low enough to do that.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, I'm depending on I'm depending and trusting on Brincy's, um, I guess you could say, long history of incubation knowledge and know-how
Got
to
it.
be able to give me a good thermometer, to base everything off of. Um, and like I said, they've done a pretty good job from what I see. Um, and like I said, eggs are right on time. If I just use this in the incubator and check my temperatures.
Right.
But like I said, since this is so accurate, I use this as a master. This is my master, and these, they might be off a degree or two, and I'll put these in the same area right side by side, and I'll compare them.
Got it.
Um, just depends on how much. Sometimes, some of the incubators are so small, you might have to do one at a time, but at least they're all calibrated. Um, but when you're using multiple thermometers and stuff like that, but you shouldn't have no more than one extra secondary, thermometer, hydrometer in your incubator anyway. That just one is all you need. Like I said, I've seen, two or three of them inside of an incubator. I'm like, wow, but
Well, sometimes I can kind of see the logic behind that to see if there's hot and cold spots.
oh yeah,
Um, you
that's why I
know,
use these. I have three or four in there, but a lot of people, they're not checking it for hot and cold spots. They're trying to verify their temperature while they're
right.
running eggs, and you can't. It's like, well, you're in the middle of a hatch now. It's kind of too late to do all of that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I verify each and every one of them. They're all checked by this master thermometer. Each and every one. I have like 4 or 5 of these floating around. They run off of a AAA battery, and they'll last me for a season, and I'll change them out. And these have actually lasted me since I found these. These are 3 years old, so they've actually been pretty good to me. And I've had them around for a while. I got them all labeled now, so I know. Oops.
Cool. Yep.
I got one on them, 2, 3, 4, 5 that way, and they're listed on my phone that way. But like I said, you can just lay them all around in your incubator, so you can check your hot and cold spots in your incubator. And
Got it.
then once you do all of that, you got a stable, incubator that circulates air pretty well, and you shouldn't. The Metacoupix, the way it's designed, a lot of it comes down to design of incubators, and some of the designs are just crap.
Yeah.
But the Metacoupix, the way it's set up, it kind of mimics the Brincy a little bit. The shape with the round corners and the domed lids and all, so it's kind of hard for hot cold spots to appear and hide in
Got
there.
it.
So, because all I can put on the 4 sides, I can put one of these on all 4 sides, and it's 99 and a half, 99.8. It'll bump 100 and come off. As long as it's not getting up over 100 and staying there. Everything's within a half degree, all 4 of them.
That's great.
The only cool spot that I find is right up underneath the fan directly.
Okay.
So you might have something hatching off maybe 5-6 hours late, but this is something, this is the but though. This is just running an empty incubator too.
Yeah, that's true. It changes
Yeah.
when.
So what can happen is when you put all your eggs in there, all them eggs become heat sinks,
Hmm.
and it slows down the airflow. So when it slows down that airflow and you have all these little heat sinks in there, it could actually warm those eggs up in that cool spot enough. And it was only off by 1.5 degrees,
Hmm.
without anything in the incubator. So all those eggs and the restriction from the eggs slowing the air down could, possibly warm those eggs up in the middle enough to where it probably might not even make a big difference in, hatch time.
Right.
So it might be maybe a couple hours difference,
Yep. Very cool. So, okay, you've calibrated your thermometer. How long does calibration last? Does it last forever, or can you break the calibration by like dropping the thermometer, or like?
Well, the only way you're going to do away with this is, or mess up the calibration on this is to break it. It's a
Okay.
liquid glass thermometer. And the reason why I want this, or I like this as a master, is because it operates the exact same way every single time. When I put it in that incubator, there's no variable that's gonna, change it.
Okay.
Um, so if it gets too hot, yeah, it'll throw it way off. Or it gets too cold, it'll throw it way off. But we're not, trying to go to extremes.
Sure.
But but this, if you throw these in here, in an incubator,
And
you have
that's the Govey.
that's the Govey. If
Yep.
you throw these little Govies in there, I mean, there is chips in them. There's, little circuit boards in them. Really, really cheap thermometers and things like that. Um, they have a coating that you can put on some of these things to coat them, to protect them from humidity and things like that. But normally these things aren't set up for 90+% humidity when all the chicks start hatching at one time.
Right.
So you start getting that, once they all start hatching at the same time, you get condensation on the lid. Especially when you get a bunch hatching. And sometimes, that humidity can get on that chipset
Yeah.
in there and kind of, that's kind of conductive, and it'll mess with things, and, possibly throw off your temperatures over time. But since it's so simple to calibrate, or verify, your temperature, I do it every single time.
Got it.
I put eggs in an incubator. That way I know it's 100% right, and I don't have any issues.
Yeah, that sounds super smart. Okay, so next question. We've talked about temperature. What about humidity? Is there a way to calibrate humidity?
Um, Humidity is a couple different ways. I'll start off the cheap way, like I did with the thermometer. If you're in a pickle, once again, you don't know if your humidity is off. Um, there's a scientific way of doing it, and you can use, well, this is dried out now, but this is sea salt.
Okay.
But you can take salt and, say you have your little, you can have like an analog style, hygrometer out of a humidor or something like that, or you can have, it looks kind of like a dial thermometer. Have you ever seen one of them?
I have. Yep.
Okay, but it looks like a little clock or something, a little dial. Well, they're set up about the same way. You can adjust and calibrate them through that little knob, or you can use these if you have a hygrometer or whatever on a Thermopro or a Govey or these. But anyway, this is the way to do it at home, the cheap way. And if you trust yourself, and in doing your own little experiment in a way. I
That may
guess.
be asking a lot for me.
But anyway, you take, and it's salt. Salt has the ability to pull pull moisture from the air and actually put moisture into the air.
Okay.
And it stabilizes itself around 75% relative humidity. It stops putting into the air and pulling out of the air at 75% relative
Okay.
humidity.
Interesting.
So what you can do is you can take sea salt, or you can take regular table salt. I haven't seen too much of a difference. They claim regular table salt is a little more accurate, but like I said, I didn't see much difference in the sea salt. But this is sea salt in particular. But you take and wet it down to the consistency of wet sand.
Okay.
You don't want it, dissolving the sand, dissolving the salt. You don't want it running across the bowl or the tray that you've got it setting in. You just wet it down till it's the consistency of wet sand, and it kind of gets that translucent look to it.
Okay.
Kind of starts looking clear a little bit, and it's almost like it's a paste. And like I said, don't have it dissolve or anything. You just take it and you put it in a Ziploc bag, set it, put the tray in there, that wet salt. It doesn't have to be a certain amount. You can put 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, and you can take these and stick in there in the Ziploc bag with that salt solution, let it set overnight, and that analog, hygrometer, the dial hygrometer, or these hygrometers should read close, to 75%. If they don't, calibrate them, adjust them.
Okay.
Go into the Bluetooth settings, change your stuff to 75%. Because usually it takes about 12 hours for it to stabilize everything inside the bag and all. And same thing with the the little dial style hygrometers. Just turn the screw, adjust it. But with those, and like I said, again with anything, put it back in there. You might have to let it set for another 6 or 8 hours. But you know how much you change this. These are a little more exact. But the ones with the dials, you might have to let them set in there for another 6 or 8 hours at least, for the rest of the day, just to verify those, because they're kind of an analog setup. But but yeah, that's one way to just DIY it at home and know that you have an exact science to calibrating hygrometers and stuff like that and checking them. And then you could also take this tray and put more salt on it, because now you're talking about area. You could actually take and measure out probably 800 grams of salt, wet it all down because you need a larger amount, and you could actually put it in your incubator. But with the incubator, you got to seal the incubator up. So Scotch tape the seam around it, all the little holes, around the fan head and things like that. So I kind of use the method of calibrating these or the dial style in the Ziploc bag. It, kind of eliminates the need to, to have to do all of that Scotch tape and sealing.
Got it.
And then
just to be clear for, for anybody who might have a question, you're just using the salt in the incubator to calibrate with. Yes. You're not saying to do that normally.
No, I'm just using it strictly to calibrate, to see because salt stabilizes at 75% relative humidity. If you put it in there, your incubator should read 75. And if it's adjustable, you can go into settings on the incubator and adjust it, or you can go in, if it's not adjustable, you just have to count off how many numbers you're off.
Got it.
Subtract it or add to your display, what you got on your display.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I think it's, it's super important to do these because consistency is the key for incubation, and making sure that your temperature and your humidity are as spot on as possible. As you mentioned, quail eggs are smaller, so they're not as forgiving as, chicken eggs or duck eggs or something like that when you've got temperature that's off.
Oh yeah.
Um, so let's talk now. Let's say we are using those less expensive incubators instead of like a big cabinet incubator. Well, first, let's talk about the reason why the cabinet incubators maybe work a little better versus the tabletop ones. Those cabinet incubators have a whole lot more insulation and thicker insulation
Oh yeah.
versus, the tabletop ones. And you had mentioned, as far as, the price of assembly and putting them together, and maybe things aren't quite as, exact or as much care put into it.
Yeah.
There's a difference in a $30 incubator versus a $1,000 incubator in how it's assembled.
Oh yeah.
And I know that, like, with hatching time, one of the complaints is that they just have the little porthole windows versus, people like to see the clear
Hmm.
plastic where you can see things hatch. But, those porthole windows help keep it even more insulated
Oh yeah.
versus, a great big glass or plexiglass, plastic lid or something.
Oh yeah, that plexiglass, I mean, it gives up heat, like crazy, So, like I think an inch of wood is like, for every inch of wood is like, one R rating.
Mhm.
So I don't know exactly what the hatching times are made out of, and there are ratings on some of the materials that they have, whether they have a foam in between them or what. But I mean, as long as you can keep it as solid as possible and a gasket on there, and you're not letting heat out. I mean, and you don't have anything that gives up heat. That, like that plexiglass, it gives it. You touch it and it's nice and warm, but if it's all cool 65 degrees outside,
Yeah.
it's just dissipating that heat just like that, and you're making it work so much harder,
Mhm.
especially with the tabletops.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some ways that, because, like, not everybody can afford or wants to afford $1,000 incubator. And are using, a lot of people are using the smaller tabletop. So let's talk about ways that we can make those work better. Um, so what about running them ahead of time?
Um, like I said, you run them all when you first get them. Run them all, check them out, make sure the heating, make sure the fans are working. Heat them. Heat them up for a couple hours. Make sure everything inside of them is nice and warm. Run them in an area. Run your calibrations and everything in the area that you plan on hatching your eggs. Make sure you don't have any drafts, things like that can pull heat out of the incubator. These incubators, um, they're only like the little silicone strand that's in the top of them
Mhm.
that does the heating elements, silicone heating elements. It's in them. It's only, I think it's somewhere around the neighborhood of like 10 watts per foot. And you don't have but probably 30 watts altogether of heating capacity there. So it's not a lot. So you need to make sure that the incubator can keep up with the space that it's in, because if not, you're going to be fighting temperatures, you're going to be fighting humidity, because if you got drafts, you're fighting temperature. Then if you got drafts, it's moving air and stuff around inside the incubator. It might be cooler air, it might be drier air, so you might be fighting it. So just run it in an area that you plan on, and calibrate it in the area that you plan on.
Oh, yeah, that's a big thing too. Yeah. Um, and probably wanna make sure it's indoors and not, like,
Yeah.
in your garage that's unheated or shop or something like
Yeah,
that.
they are no space heater, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
You wanna make sure, that also you're not putting it directly in front of a window.
Yeah.
You know, sunbeams coming in can heat that thing up like crazy.
Oh yeah, that's another little oven then. I mean, it all of a sudden it ain't got much of a heating element in it, but it all of a sudden turns into oven quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, something else to think about is access to pets and small children.
Yes.
I know I've had a number of customers who have been super excited about hatching their eggs and, had a cat knock it off the counter or a dog go behind the table and unplug it, or children that I want to see and, turn something
Yeah.
off or whatever. So, it's important to help that incubator work best by placing it in the best position away from, a vent or drafts or windows, or, make sure it's indoors. Um, so let's talk about the packaging it comes in. We were talking about this before the show, and the
Mhm.
styrofoam.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, think it's just packaging. I mean, they open it up, it's, hey, it's in its own little cooler, I guess you could say. And that's exactly what it is, it's its own little cooler. Um, don't throw that styrofoam away. If you look at it and notice a lot of the holes that is in this packaging matches the holes that are in your incubator.
Yeah.
So it's made to plug in. It might have the big hole so you can plug in the power cord up top. And it's got the little hole off to the side where you can put, water into it.
Or an air vent
Air
space.
vents.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, so don't throw that packaging away. It is a layer of insulation so that incubator, you don't work the crap out of it. And
Yep.
it keeps drafts out also, so or help block those drafts,
Yep. Yep.
so, and it keeps that incubator a whole lot more stable, so you keep those eggs a whole lot more stable. So every little thing you can do to keep the temperature from fluctuating and humidity from fluctuating in that incubator helps those eggs a whole lot.
Yep, absolutely. And if you're somebody who has already tossed out that foam, which I totally did when I first got my incubators, cover it. Wrap
Mm-hmm.
a towel or a blanket around it. The big thing is, eggs need oxygen.
Oh yes.
You want to make sure that you keep your vents, uncovered if you're going to wrap stuff around them, so that you can still get fresh air into that incubator.
Yeah, air exchange is a big thing for anything. Even though it doesn't seem like they're not living, breathing outside of the shell yet, but it's still a living, little breathing, you know, you know, creature inside of that shell,
Yeah,
and that shell has got thousands of pores in it, and it's exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's just back and
absolutely.
forth, so you have to exchange it, exchange air in and out of the incubator. So it really needs it. And like I said, I've heard a lot of different things, over the years. Keep them closed, keep vents closed, and keep them open, things like that. I would say, keep them open as much as possible. Even the manual to the Matacoupix tells you never to close all your vents, down past 1/3.
Yeah.
So a lot of the incubators will tell you that, don't close all of your vents completely off because you need that oxygen.
Yep. And, before you were talking about, after you open your incubator when you were calibrating and stuff, that you waited a good 15 to 30 minutes before you looked at that, thermometer. And that's because when you open the incubator, it takes a while for it to stabilize and get
Yeah.
back to normal temp. So that being said, we want to be careful that we're not opening the incubators all the time.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're fluctuating. And like I said, tiny little quail egg, and you're constantly moving and, moving the top, opening the top, stuff like that. You're letting cold air just rush in and shocking the embryo,
Yep.
every time you do it, and you're affecting it every time you do something.
Yep. and changing the humidity
Yep.
and all kinds of stuff. And so it is really important. There's the whole debate of turning versus not turning and automatic turners versus hand turners. And for me, I definitely prefer a turner over not turning, but I
Yeah.
would prefer a not turning over hand turning because you're reaching in there multiple times a
Yeah.
day, changing the temperature, potentially putting bacteria on the eggs from your hands from turning them around. So, the best would be using turners, but then there's danger in that too, isn't there?
Yeah, they get a little jerky sometimes.
Yeah. See, that there are some incubators that their turners are not quite as delicate
Yeah.
um with the eggs. And especially if you're using a chicken turner, one that's made for the size of a chicken egg versus a quail egg, I've seen them kind of hit those eggs pretty hard and tumble them pretty
Yeah.
fast. And all of that can affect your hatch rate as well.
Oh yeah. Especially when you start messing around with, shipped eggs. That's a big kicker for,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know,
We were talking about the position that you want, if it's possible that you'd prefer to ship or to incubate shipped eggs. Let's talk about that.
um you get shipped eggs in, they always tell you to let them rest for a little while. And there's a reason why, because when they're getting bumped around and thumped all over the place up and down the road, and, you get air cells detached and things like that. So, if you ever seen one that's pretty bad, you can look at the egg and kind of turn it to the side just a hair, and the air cells over here, instead of up
Yep.
here.
Bloop.
So you need to let them. Yep, you need to let them set, and you let them set pointy end down for that. Some people do it for 24 hours, but some people do it for 12, 16. But I do it for about 16, and I let it ride. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, pointy end down. But then when you go and you put them in, say, a lay down style incubator, and the egg is, used to setting like this from being resting, the air cell is up here. We've reset the air cell from its ride from 500 miles away or 1,000 miles, and you lay it down again, and then that turner starts to doing this
Jostle them
number
around.
every couple hours. Well, now that air cell is detaching again and kind of moving up here,
Yep.
or ones that are on the verge of detaching. That now you done detached even more air cells, because
Yep.
they're bumping and grinding along the bottom. So the tilting style, where they just stay in the pointy end down position, the upright position, they just tilt very slowly. It's a
Yep.
whole lot more gentle on the eggs. And I've seen a lot of people ask, would you prefer, tilt or the roller style? Well, I mean, like I said, I've seen, um, a lot of stuff that I've seen. I've got some roller styles and I've got the tilt styles. I get better hatch rate out of tilt styles.
Yeah.
And, but also I have gotten decent stuff out of the rollers with my own eggs,
Hmm.
but they're horrible with hatching eggs. So, why not just go with the tilt style, and you can do the best of both worlds. You can hatch the, shipped eggs, with a little bit better success, and your own eggs
Yep.
and have no issues. So that's where I
Awesome.
kind of land on that end of the deal.
Yeah, I agree, especially with shipped eggs. Yeah, those poor air cells can suffer quite a bit during shipping. Um, okay, so before we close up, we did get a question from one of our fans. Carly Keeler wants to know, how can we tell if we have hot or cold spots versus temp fluctuations in a tabletop incubator that has a spinning turner? So I guess, if you have a turner and the eggs are moving around, they're kind of
Yeah.
moving in and out of those hot and cold spots. So I guess what Carly is asking is maybe if, their hatch rate issues or embryo mortality, how do they know, with fluctuations versus hot and cold spots that might be causing that?
Um, like I said, a lot of when you go and check your hot cold spots with these, you
Mhm.
can place them in there. But I will tell you this with the Turner style, I don't the ones that I have seen in my experience with some of them I've had, was it the hot, I can't even pronounce it, the Hiawatha or whatever it
Oh,
is.
yeah. Yep.
I have that one, and it's a round dome style.
Yep.
Um, and I have a couple other Turner styles that are round dome. Um, I don't find them too awful much to have hot and cold spots, to be honest with you. But unless the fan is off, it's the fan isn't big enough to circulate the air like it needs
Mhm.
to inside of it. The design is just completely flawed and messed up. But the few that I've had, I haven't really, the square box ones, like the, farming
Oh,
innovator
yeah,
ones.
farm innovators are
They
bad.
are horrible
They're
because
so bad at for that.
they have square surfaces.
Yeah.
So I don't find that I really have a whole lot of hot and cold spots in those, because in a round area, air is constantly moving, and in some of the better ones, they have the little fins in the top that kind of takes the air and moves it around,
Mhm.
and the air falls, and then it gets pulled back into the middle and then recirculated again.
Got
That's
it.
been my experience with them, and I haven't had a whole lot of experience, in experiencing hot and cool spots in those dome styled incubators.
So
Because
probably something.
it's really no place for cool spots to hide, it
Yeah,
seems.
that's a really good point. So probably with something like, one of the most common ones is the Nurture Right 360. And I know with that, it's temperature fluctuations that
Yeah,
really cause an issue with that. And so using your Govee with the Bluetooth is handy because you can track those
yeah,
fluctuations with that if you've calibrated it. We need to
yeah,
go back and say that one more time.
yeah,
But it is good for tracking those changes and
yeah.
seeing, oh wow, yeah, it wasn't consistent at all. It was, plus or minus, a degree and a half on each side.
I think a lot of the times that, because a lot of the time mass and area has a lot to do with the incubator in the design, the way they design it. Um, I think sometimes with the fan on the inside of them, like I said, they're underpowered or overpowered.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's some of them. It's like the Matacoupix. A lot of people say they can't get the Matacoupix 20 versus the Matacoupix 30. A lot of people say I went with the 30 just for the capacity, and I don't need a 20 egg, incubator.
Mhm.
So, but a lot of people complain about the 20. It's a smaller incubator,
Yeah.
but the fan head is the same size as the one that's on the 30. That's a pretty powerful little fan on the inside on that 30. So what I'm thinking with some of that stuff is you have such a small area, and you if you overpower it, you're blowing out the temperatures. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah.
It's you just because when eggs are constantly losing moisture, so as air moves, it's kind of like when you have when you're in the summertime, you're sweating, you're losing moisture, and a fan blows over you, that moving air, that moisture is carrying heat away,
Yeah.
and it's evaporating off. So the eggs are doing the same thing. And so it's cool, having a cooling effect to all of that. You're carrying heat away. And I think the fan can blow holes you know, in the temperature and cause it to fluctuate. It's just too much, or it's overpowered or underpowered, and they're
Sure.
so small. So I think some of the fans and some of them that I've seen it's just the reason why it's kind of like the farm and innovator ones.
Yeah.
The fan in those are too small. I think they need a little bit bigger fan.
Yeah.
Um, to because I found hot spots in that, because this is a little teeny tiny fan in a big old box. So, and plus the fan isn't centered. I
Yeah.
actually I actually cut out a piece of plexiglass to center the fan and re-drill new holes to center the fan. And
Oh,
it actually
wow.
it actually improved my hot and cold spots. So, and it evened it out a whole lot more. But I mean, it's not worth messing with. But I like tinkering with stuff like that.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
But and you also proved a point in doing it,
yeah,
that just that fan being off center just a little bit, it changed things. Yeah.
yeah. So, but like I said, I think with the Maticupix 20, I think if they put a little bit smaller fan in there, because you have less area to circulate
Mhm.
air, less volume. So you don't need that big fan. You just need a little bit smaller fan and have it a little more gentle. And you don't blow holes all in your temperatures and stuff. And sometimes I think that might be the case with like the Nurture Right. Is it the Nature Right or whatever? The
Yeah.
360.
NR 360. We'll just go with that. Yeah.
But I think that may be a problem. And some people like them, and sometimes it makes me think it may be just an environmental thing. A lot of that has a lot to do with it. If
Yep.
a lot of people don't think they have a drafty house, but when you don't have an incubator that ain't got but maybe 15, 20 watts to it, little tiny incubator, it don't take much to change
Exactly.
temperatures
Yep.
and make everything fluctuate. One
Well,
day
and
it might be fine, and the next day it's off.
exactly. Another thing to think about, a lot of times people will say, well, I've always had good hatches with this incubator and now XYZ is
Yeah,
that, those cheaper incubators or even the big ones. I've had parts
yeah,
fail on my giant incubators. Um, you know, over time, you've got heat, you've got
yeah.
humidity, you've got vibration, you've got all the things that things can fail, parts can fail.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why one, you want to check it before you start running it every single
Hmm.
time. And two, you want to make sure that you're cleaning it real well. Clean those
Yeah.
fans. Make sure those fans are able to turn because you know what? Chicks are dusty.
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff that stuff can clog up anything.
Oh yeah. They're pretty dusty little critters, but yeah, like I said, I mean the heat, the humidity, like you're talking about, it, and plus it all comes down to how well that unit on top of these incubators are sealed.
Yeah.
If they're not very well sealed, they're cheap incubators. All that humidity just rises and goes straight up and kind of escapes, and and especially when all the chicks get in there hatching at one time and all that
Yep.
condensation builds up. I mean, you got the process of electrolysis starting to take place, and that's just eating away. The electricity and the little charges is just going through, and it can throw off diodes and chips and kind of screw with things and corrode
Sure.
places in there. So, and can throw off, resistances and ohms and stuff like that on the boards and cause things to go up. 1 minute it'll be just fine because the humidity is at, you know, 45%. And once they start hatching, everything starts going wonky because it's at 70 and things are starting to get, wet, starting
Yeah.
to climb on up because they're hatching and the incubators, not working. But, a lot of it has to do with quality products too, quality parts,
Mhm.
you can get a cheap one, pay $35 for it, last you a season. Some of them you can count on throwing them in the garbage can the next year, grab you a new one.
Yep. Exactly. Well, Jason, thank you again so much for coming on and talking with us about this. It's been just a joy having you on. You're so full of knowledge, and I know that everybody's going to love this episode.
Well, I have one more thing. I
Yeah.
forgot. We were talking about the humidity calibration. We talked about the salt method, but if you're unsure about mixing your own salt, solution, um, this is something that I found that's pretty decent.
Oh
The Bo-
yeah, I forgot you showed me those. Yeah.
yeah, the Bovita packs. They are made by a company that makes humidors, and they make the hygrometers to go in the humidors for cigars.
Hmm.
And these are they call them humidity packs, terpene packs, or whatever, because um, you these packs go in these humidors to keep them at a certain humidity to keep the terpenes from evaporating out of the cigars and changing the taste. So these things are made in the U.S. And they are advertised at quite a few different relative humidities. They'll have 40%, 35%. They'll have 60. They have a calibration, what they call a calibration pack, which is 75%. So if you want to go with that, you can use that and throw that in there, throw it in a Ziploc bag. If you say you got an incubator the size of the Maticupix 30, these are 450 gram packs. You can buy a 4-pack of them. I put 2 of these in that incubator.
Okay.
And when I threw these in there, let them set overnight for 12, 16 hours, and I sealed the incubator up.
Okay.
Just for the fact that, you want the packs to do all of the work and create their own environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you will, these are 450 gram packs, the size 67, 2 of them in there in that Maticupix 30 or, your other incubator, whatever you have, but throw it in there, let it set overnight. And these are 62% relative humidity because I figure, 60 to 65% is what I hatch quail at.
Sure.
So, I'm close. I figure, well, they're advertised to be within 2% accuracy. So within 2 percentage points of this, up or down. So
cool.
That's kind of setting right in the middle of where you want to be.
Yeah.
So, and the Maticupix out of the box was reading 64%. So 2 points off. It's not bad.
Wow.
So it's fairly accurate. So, and like I said, I have, through the salt method that I did, DIY salt method at home, where I calibrated these on, I put this and this in a bag together just to cross-reference the 2 methods.
Uh-huh.
And this come up dead on top of 62. The incubator was right there at 64.
Okay.
So I'm just verifying both of my methods to make sure they jive together and make sure these are decent. And the scientific method I used is the same as what they used, essentially.
That's awesome. That's a cool tool. Yeah.
But yeah, if you don't know, if you're unsure about mixing it, because if you mix too much water in it, you start running water out of the solution or out of the salt. Salt starts to dissolve, and the more surface area you expose to water, you're going to skew your numbers.
Right.
That's
right.
the reason why it doesn't need to be, it just needs to be saturated, and it just needs to be kind of like a sandy consistency, wet sand consistency. So, but if you're unsure about it, I think these are like $25, something like that. And you're unsure of mixing your own stuff and you're weary of it, get you some of these packs and they work. I mean, cool. So like I said, the only thing is you can put them in Ziploc bags with your hygrometers and make sure they're calibrated. This is, I guess you could say this would be kind of like your master hygrometer checking device, and then, like I said, if you put these in your incubator to check the hygrometer display on there, seal your incubator up, all of your vents, everything, because you don't want any airflow, because these things cannot exchange moisture. These have the ability also to pull moisture out of the air and put moisture into the air.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't do that fast enough if you have a draft.
Got it.
So seal them up good and tight and then put them in there. And that's one easy way of doing it without, being unsure yourself doing the salt method at home.
Cool. Okay. That is fantastic. I'm glad that you remembered to talk about that because I totally forgot. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help us out quite a bit. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, that's no problem. I have one other thing. I know you've probably seen it. I created a little page off of my regular, page.
Yeah.
Called Covey's Quail. So I did that because Quail is eating up my personal page on Facebook.
Yeah.
So, and plus two, eventually, eventually I'm going to do something with this as far as, maybe doing something business wise. But this year, I'm hoping if everything goes well, I'll be able to start doing things with birds and eggs. But I started doing this, and I figured this would be a good foundation, and started putting like some little videos, some tips and tricks to,
Awesome.
for tabletop incubators, because that's where majority of people start at.
Mm-hmm.
And I figure I'd, start laying down a foundation of kind of where to start,
Sure.
because a lot of people come into it, they're like, oh, I like quail, but some of their gateway drug is the quail, and you're like, oh man, you're starting in a good spot,
Right.
Chicken, it's like you should have started with chickens. They're a little more forgiving than quail, and you're in the middle of something that you don't know what you're even getting yourself into.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I'm lining up. I've got some little videos and things over there that you can kind of refer to on that page, and I'm trying to get that to where I've got some followers to where I can, do things, in other groups and stuff like that under that name.
Awesome.
Instead of my personal stuff all the time. So,
yeah.
I figured, like I said, I just make that a good foundation to start, calibrating humidity, all of this stuff for an incubator and how to start off.
That's awesome. So everybody make sure you go give Covey's Quail. I got that right? Covey's Quail?
Yep. COVEY''S.
Awesome. Yeah, we will definitely I'll go give you a follow. Fantastic.
All righty. That sounds good to me.
All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you now. Bye-bye.